The entire pack was on their knees. The same wolves who had called me weak, silent, irrelevant. And when the council demanded to know why the Alpha protected me for 30 years, I finally showed them the mark they were never meant to see. For 30 years, I lived inside the Alpha house like a shadow stitched to a throne. I attended council dinners, I smiled at political allies, I stood half a step behind my husband during ceremonies. To them, I was quiet, decorative, politically useless, emotionally fragile. I was never Luna officially, never Alpha, just his wife. And I never challenged it, because I couldn't. The pack thought my silence was submission. They believed the Alpha married me out of pity, a soft-hearted decision after a border skirmish left me orphaned. They whispered that I lacked dominance, that my scent was too muted, that no wolf truly bowed to me. What they didn't know was that silence was the only thing keeping them alive. The Alpha knew from the beginning who I truly was. He saw it the night our bond sealed, when the moonlight struck my skin and something ancient flickered beneath it. Not wolf, not human, older. He hid it. He buried it beneath marriage contracts and political distractions. He made sure I never challenged council decisions. Not because I was weak, but because if I ever did, the hierarchy would fracture. And now, he was dead, and the protection was gone.
Welcome to Alpha King Romance Diaries, where passion meets power and love always reigns supreme. This channel is your escape into powerful love stories, deep emotions, and irresistible alpha energy. Hit subscribe and join the kingdom. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Stay tuned, the fun is just getting started.
For 30 years, I lived inside the Alpha house like something preserved behind glass. Seen, admired even, but never considered dangerous. They called me composed, gentle, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who poured wine at council feasts and stood gracefully beside power without ever touching it. I attended every gathering, I memorized every alliance, I watched every rival pack envoy measure the room, and I smiled as if I understood none of it. To them, I was quiet, decorative, politically useless, emotionally fragile. I was never Luna officially. The council had delayed the ceremony for decades under the excuse of tradition. I was never Alpha. I never asked to be. I was simply his wife, and I never challenged it, because I couldn't. The illusion had to remain intact. The beta once laughed when I offered an opinion about border patrol rotations. "Leave strategy to wolves who can actually fight," he'd said. The council chuckled politely. I lowered my gaze, folded my hands, and apologized. They mistook restraint for incapacity. They thought the Alpha indulged me out of affection, a sentimental bond, a war orphan he married to soothe his conscience. They believed my scent was faint because I lacked dominance. They believed no wolf bowed instinctively because there was nothing in me worth bowing to. They were wrong. The Alpha never corrected them, not once. When visiting dignitaries questioned my absence from war councils, he would say lightly, "My wife prefers peace to politics." When younger wolves tested me with subtle disrespect, he let it pass. It wasn't neglect, it was containment. What they didn't know was that silence was the only thing keeping them alive. I felt it every full moon, the pressure beneath my skin, like something ancient pressing against bone, a pulse that did not match the pack rhythm, a current older than the territory, older than the council bloodlines carved into the stone floor of the assembly hall. Sometimes the ground responded to my bare feet. Sometimes wolves avoided my gaze without understanding why. I learned to dim it, to shrink it, to soften my scent, steady my breathing, lower my eyes before instinct forced theirs downward. The Alpha saw everything. On nights when the moon burned too bright and the air tasted metallic, he would hold my face in his hands and whisper, "Not yet." Not yet, as if he were counting down to something only he understood. And I obeyed, because if I ever stopped obeying, the hierarchy would fracture, and I was never meant to fracture it. I was meant to outlive it. They never feared the widow. They should have.
The night he marked me, the moon did not look like a blessing. It looked like a witness. The ceremony had been private, far more private than tradition required. No council, no pack assembly, just the alpha, the forced clearing, and a silence so thick even the wind held its breath. They said later that he chose intimacy over spectacle. They were wrong. He chose containment. The moment his teeth broke skin and the bond sealed, something answered. Not the usual rush of warmth wolves describe, not the gentle threading of two souls into one. This was older. The air snapped like a stretched wire. The earth beneath us pulsed, and for a fraction of a second the trees bent, not toward him, toward me. His grip tightened. He felt it too. When I lifted my head, his expression wasn't triumph. It wasn't love, even though love was there. It was recognition. The alpha knew from the beginning. He saw what surfaced in my eyes that night, a glint not born of his bloodline, not born of this pack, something that did not bow. Later, in the privacy of our chamber, he traced the faint shimmer along my collarbone where the mark had tried to form and then disappeared. "You must never let them see that," he said quietly. "See what?" I asked, but I already knew. I carry the bloodline of the first Alpha Queen, the original throne blood, a forbidden hybrid lineage spoken of only in fragmented texts locked beneath council vaults, a line that predates the current Alpha family, a line that does not inherit authority, it reclaims it. But my bloodline comes with a cost, a power that awakens only under threat, a mark that appears only after the Alpha dies, a bond that destabilizes pack hierarchy itself. He had read the old laws long before he chose me. He knew what my existence would mean if exposed. The council would not see legacy. They would see threat. They would see execution as prevention. So he built a narrative around me, soft, harmless, politically irrelevant. He delayed the Luna ceremony. He minimized my presence at strategic meetings. He encouraged the perception of fragility. Every insult they offered me, he allowed. Every dismissal, he let stand. Not because I was weak, because if they sensed what slept beneath my skin, they would have tried to kill me before it matured, and perhaps they would have succeeded. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, he would press his forehead to mine and whisper, "When it wakes, it won't ask permission." "When what wakes?" I would murmur. He never answered directly. Instead, he would say, "Not yet," as if he were guarding more than a marriage, as if he were guarding a throne no one remembered existed. They said it was heart failure, as if the word itself could dull the insult. Alphas do not die quietly. They fall in battle. They are challenged. They tear the sky open with their final roar. They do not collapse in their own bed while the moon hangs full and unthreatened above the territory. The morning they found him, the house was too still. No shattered glass, no overturned furniture, no scent of intruder strong enough to accuse. Just the faint trace of something bitter beneath the cedar smoke that always lingered in our chambers. I knew that scent. It did not belong to illness. It belonged to design. The council moved quickly, too quickly. Before the sun had fully risen, the physician had declared it natural. Before the body cooled, the elders were discussing interim leadership. Before the pack had finished howling in mourning, the beta was already issuing patrol adjustments. Efficiency masquerading as stability. He died without publicly naming a successor. That was the first fracture. Tradition demands clarity, and Alpha chooses before his final breath. It prevents chaos, prevents bloodshed. He had chosen no one, or perhaps he had, but not in the way they expected. At the vigil, I watched them more than I wept.
The gamma avoided my eyes. The beta's grief did not reach his scent. Two council members stood too close together, whispering in tones too controlled to be sorrow. And beneath it all, the pack bond felt unsettled, not broken, unsettled, like something waiting. The night before he died, he had been restless, not weak, restless. He paced the length of our chamber, pausing at the window as if listening to something beyond the forest line. "Trust nothing that moves too smoothly," he had said. I thought he meant rival packs. I did not realize he meant his own council. When I touched his hand in the darkness, his pulse had been strong, steady, alpha strong. Hours later, it was gone. No struggle, no warning, just silence. Too clean. As they carried his body through the courtyard, I felt it again, that faint metallic taste in the air, the same current that had snapped the night he marked me, only this time it coiled instead of sparked. The pack assumed I was powerless now, a widow without ceremony, a mate without title, a woman whose protection had just been buried beneath stone. They did not see what his death truly meant. They thought the shield was gone. They did not understand. Some powers do not awaken while the alpha lives. Some marks do not surface until protection is removed. And as the earth closed over his coffin, something beneath my skin stirred, not in grief, in response. This was not a natural death. It was an opening move, and whoever made it believed I would remain exactly what I had always appeared to be. Quiet, decorative, politically irrelevant. They had miscalculated. Badly. The council convened before the morning fires had finished burning. Efficiency, they called it. Stability. I stood at the edge of the stone chamber where I had stood for 30 years, half a step behind the Alpha's former seat. Only this time, there was no throne beside me, only absence. The Beta did not offer condolences. He offered procedure. With the Alpha gone and no successor named, he began smoothly, the Council will assume interim control of pack governance. Murmurs of agreement followed. Not grief, agreement. I said nothing. That was what they expected. One of the elders unrolled a parchment already prepared. My name was written smaller than the others. "Given that you were never formally installed as Luna," she said, not looking at me, "your residence in the Alpha quarters is symbolic, temporary. Symbolic, temporary." They were rewriting 30 years in careful, polite language. "You will relocate to the eastern wing by nightfall, for your comfort, of course. For containment." A younger council member shifted, emboldened by the silence. "It is also the council's recommendation that you refrain from attending governance meetings moving forward. Your presence may complicate transition." Complicate. I almost smiled. Strip her of authority, move her out of Alpha quarters, publicly insult her, attempt to exile her. They were following a script they believed inevitable. "You were never one of us," the Beta said finally, his voice dropping just enough to make it personal. The words echoed in the chamber. Several wolves avoided my gaze, and that's when my blood began to burn. It started low in my spine, a slow, deliberate heat. Not rage, not yet. Something older, something responding to threat. The air thickened. A few wolves shifted on their feet. I lowered my eyes as I always had, folded my hands as I had been trained to do, the picture of composed surrender. But beneath the stillness, the pack bond pulsed differently, unsteady, drawn. The Beta stepped closer, testing dominance now that the Alpha's shadow was gone. "You will comply," he said softly, meant only for me. I lifted my gaze, just slightly. For a fraction of a second, the chamber tilted. He stepped back. Only half a step, but enough. A crack splintered across the stone floor near the council table. Small, barely visible, but not imagined. Whispers rippled. I steadied my breathing and the heat receded, coiling again beneath skin. Not yet. The phrase echoed in memory, but this time it felt less like restraint and more like countdown. They mistook the moment for grief, for instability, for a widow losing composure. They dismissed it. The council finalized their decree. I was to vacate by sunset. Exile disguised as dignity. As I turned to leave the chamber, I heard one elder murmur, "She'll fade quietly." Fade. They still believed I required their permission to remain. They still believed the Alpha had been my power. They did not understand what his absence had removed. Not my protection, my restraint. It began after sunset. The eastern wing they assigned me was smaller, colder, deliberately distant from the heart of the pack house. A symbolic relocation, a quiet demotion. I closed the door behind me and the silence thickened. For 30 years, I had suppressed the current beneath my skin, smoothed it, dimmed it, pretended it was nothing more than imagination. Now there was nothing left to hold it down. The first pulse struck without warning. I dropped to my knees as heat lanced across my spine. Not pain, pressure, expanding, unfolding. A power that awakens only under threat. The words surfaced from memory like prophecy. My breath hitched, the air changed, and then it burned. Light bled beneath my skin, tracing lines I had only glimpsed in reflections over the years. Ancient geometry, curved sigils woven with sharp, sovereign edges. It spread from the base of my spine upward, deliberate and precise. A mark that appears only after the Alpha dies. The realization settled cold and absolute. I staggered toward the mirror. It was no longer faint. It was unmistakable. The sigil beneath my skin glowed as if it had been waiting for darkness to claim the house. Outside, a howl fractured the night. Then another. Not mourning, response. My scent shifted. I felt it before I understood it. No longer muted, no longer softened. It rolled outward, not aggressive, not demanding, inevitable. Footsteps gathered in the courtyard. Wolves who had not bowed to me in 3 decades were suddenly restless, drawn, confused. The pack bond pulsed, not toward the beta, who now occupied the alpha seat, toward me. A bond that destabilizes pack hierarchy. I pressed my palm against the wall as another wave surged through me. The stone beneath my hand cracked, fine fractures spidering outward like veins recognizing their sovereign. In the courtyard, voices lowered. "Do you feel that?" someone whispered. "I can't scent the beta." "No, it's coming from the eastern wing." Instinct overrode politics. One by one, I felt them shift, knees bending unconsciously in the direction of my door, not in loyalty, in recognition. Hierarchy is not voted on, it is felt. The door rattled as someone approached, hesitated, then stepped back as if restrained by invisible force. I straightened slowly, heat settling into something steadier, controlled. For 30 years, I had dimmed my presence to preserve the structure they believed permanent. Now the structure trembled without me lifting a hand. The beta would feel it soon. The council would sense the shift in the bond and call it instability. They would blame grief, hysteria, coincidence. They would not yet call it what it was. The sigil pulsed once more, then settled. No longer flickering, no longer uncertain. Awake. And for the first time in my life, I did not try to hide it. Because restraint had been buried with the alpha, and the pack was already beginning to understand. Something ancient had just stepped out of silence. The summons came at dawn, not from the council, from the house itself. I felt it before I heard it, a subtle shift beneath the floorboards, a vibration through stone that did not belong to footsteps. The Alpha House had stood for generations, layered with wards older than most of the council bloodlines. Wards keyed to authority, wards that had never answered to me. Until now. I followed the pole down the western corridor, past the sealed war room, past the chamber where ancient banners hung untouched. The air grew colder, denser, threaded with something metallic and old. The vault door stood at the end of the hall, ironwood reinforced with silver veins, blood-sealed, accessible only to the reigning Alpha, or so the council believed. The Beta had tried it at first light. I had scented his frustration lingering in the air. The lock had not responded. Now, as I approached, the sigil beneath my skin warmed, not violently like before, but with recognition. I placed my palm against the center of the door. The ironwood pulsed. A thin line of light traced the grooves carved into its surface, mirroring the pattern along my spine. There was no resistance, only acknowledgement. The vault opened only to me. The hinges did not creak, they exhaled. Inside, the chamber was smaller than legend suggested. No mountains of gold, no weapons, just 3 objects resting on a stone pedestal. A sealed parchment bound in wax and blood, a small obsidian recording stone, and a leather-bound text older than the house itself. The sigil flared once, and the wax seal cracked without touch. A blood-locked decree. My name written in ink that shimmered faintly red. By ancient pack law, in the event of the Alpha's death without public succession, authority transfers to the bearer of the sovereign mark, recognized by the house and the bond. Sovereign mark. Not Luna, not mate, sovereign. My pulse remained steady as I reached for the recording stone. It activated at my touch. His voice filled the chamber. Calm. Measured. If you are hearing this, it means they forced your hand. The words did not tremble. I did not name a successor because I already chose one, not by ceremony, by blood. A pause. You outrank them. You always have. The air felt thinner. I delayed the reveal because your power required maturity, and because there are those within the council who know what you are. My jaw tightened. I could not expose you while I lived. They would have acted sooner. If I fall unexpectedly, assume it was engineered. Not accidental, engineered. The old laws are beneath the decree. They cannot refute them without dismantling the foundation of the pack itself. The stone dimmed. Silence settled, but not emptiness. Protection. He had not left me defenseless. He had left me undeniable. I lifted the ancient text. The first page bore a title nearly faded by time. The throne before the Alpha line. Not myth, not legend, law. And as I stepped back into the corridor, decree in hand, the house felt different. Not shelter, not memory, recognition. They had stripped me of quarters. They had called me temporary. They had forgotten one thing. The house does not open for guests. It opens for rulers. The assembly was called before noon. The Beta stood at the Alpha's dais, posture rigid, scent sharpened with forced authority. The council formed a half circle behind him, robes immaculate, expressions composed. Control. That was the performance. The entire pack filled the courtyard. Warriors, elders, omegas pressed along the outer stone walls. I felt the bond humming beneath their skin long before I stepped forward. Unsettled, waiting. The Beta's voice carried easily. We are gathered to stabilize leadership during this transitional period. Transitional, as if the ground itself had not shifted. His gaze found me near the front. A flicker of irritation tightened his jaw. You were instructed to refrain from governance proceedings. I walked anyway. The murmurs began immediately. Confusion, tension, instinct brushing against discipline. The council demanded explanation before I even reached the center. You have no standing here, one elder snapped. No authority, another added. I stopped at the base of the dais. Slowly, I untied the fastening at the back of my dress and let the fabric fall just enough to reveal the sigil etched along my spine. Gasps fractured the air. It was no longer faint, it burned in clear, ancient geometry, alive, deliberate. The pack bond pulsed outward from me like a second heartbeat. I lifted the decree so all could see the seal already broken by recognition. The Alpha did name a successor, I said, my voice steady, carrying without effort. The Beta's scent spiked, fear beneath denial. I let the silence stretch before delivering the truth he had tried to bury. He didn't protect me because I was weak. My gaze swept across the council. He protected you from me. Stillness. The words did not echo. They settled. I opened the ancient text and read the law older than their bloodlines, the sovereign mark, the transfer of authority, the throne before the Alpha line, a line that outranks the current Alpha family. The Beta stepped forward, attempting dominance. The bond rejected him. It was visible now, wolves shifting unconsciously away from his pole and toward mine. Warriors stiffened, then lowered their eyes, without understanding why. One knee hit stone, then another. Then a ripple passed through the courtyard like wind through tall grass. Hierarchy is not voted on, it is felt. The council members resisted longer, gripping composure like armor. But even they could not deny the pressure pressing downward. The first elder bowed stiffly. The others followed. Not to a widow, not to a discarded mate, to the bloodline they had forgotten, to the mark they were never meant to see. The Beta remained standing the longest. Our eyes met. Defiance warred with instinct. And then his knee struck stone. The courtyard fell silent, except for the collective sound of breath aligning. The ground beneath my feet steadied, as if satisfied. For 30 years, I had stood half a step behind the throne. Now, the throne recognized me, and the pack knelt. They knelt, but kneeling was only instinct. Understanding would take longer. I did not tell them to rise. Instead, I stepped onto the dais the Beta had claimed hours earlier. The stone did not resist me. It warmed beneath my feet as if recognizing an imprint long erased. The law you followed, I began, holding the ancient text open for all to see, was amended. A murmur moved through the courtyard. Not rewritten, not erased, amended. The council shifted uneasily. The Alpha line you pledged yourselves to is not the first throne of this pack. I let the words settle before continuing. The first sovereign before the Alpha, a bloodline that did not inherit dominance through challenge, but embodied it. I turned the text outward so the nearest elders could see the faded crest burned into the first page. It matched the sigil along my spine. Gasps sharpened. The first Alpha Queen? Someone whispered. I met their eyes. Not queen, I corrected gently. Sovereign. The distinction mattered. The Beta rose slowly from his kneel, regaining just enough composure to speak. Even if such a line existed, it was absorbed into the Alpha family centuries ago. Absorbed, I repeated, or displaced. Silence. I stepped down from the dais and walked through the parted crowd. No one blocked my path. The original throne blood did not disappear. It was suppressed, hidden beneath alliances, diluted through political marriage, until it resurfaced. A forbidden hybrid lineage, a line that outranks the current Alpha family, a line the council once feared enough to bury. The older council members paled. They knew the stories, fragments passed down in whispers, a sovereign whose power destabilized hierarchy because it did not compete with it, it commanded it. The sovereign mark does not answer to votes, it answers to the house, to the bond, to the land itself. As if in confirmation, the sigil pulsed faintly. The ground responded, subtle but undeniable. Political shock rippled through the courtyard. Alliances recalculated behind wary eyes. Warriors who had sworn loyalty to the beta now faced a truth older than their oaths. The alpha line had ruled by strength. The sovereign line ruled by right. I stopped before the council. You believed you governed the pack. Their silence betrayed the fracture spreading through their certainty. You governed under borrowed authority. The beta's jaw tightened. If this is true, why did the alpha never reveal it? Because your power required maturity. Because there are those within the council who know what you are. I answered evenly. He understood what exposure would provoke, and he understood what would happen if I rose before I was ready. A pause. He did not step aside. He stepped back. The realization moved through them slowly, painfully. The alpha had never been the highest authority in the room. He had been guarding it, and now the throne that predated their dynasty stood unburied, not reclaimed, remembered. Power settles quickly. Fear lingers longer. They rose from their knees slower this time, not out of resistance, but recalculation. The bond had shifted. The house had chosen. The law was undeniable. But something beneath the surface remained wrong. The alpha didn't just protect me. He was waiting for my power to mature, waiting for exposure to be irreversible. And someone in this courtyard had grown impatient. I let my gaze move across the council one by one, not accusing, measuring. You called his death natural, I said evenly. You declared succession before his body cooled. No one answered. He died without publicly naming a successor. Convenient, clean, timed. The beta stiffened. Are you accusing the council of treason? I am stating a fact, I replied. Alphas do not die quietly. The metallic scent from that morning flickered back into memory. Bitter, deliberate. I found residue in our chambers, not illness, not age. A ripple of tension fractured composure. The gamma swallowed. An elder's pulse spiked. There. Subtle, but unmistakable. And the vault, I asked, letting my voice carry. Who attempted to open it at dawn? The beta hesitated a fraction too long. Silence sharpened. You knew it existed. You knew what it might contain. His jaw tightened. Every alpha has a vault. Yes, I agreed, but not every council fears what's inside. A crack of thunder rolled across a clear sky. No storm, just pressure. The alpha's death was engineered, I said plainly. Gasps followed, not of disbelief, but recognition. And the traitor is still in the room. The words did not need to be spoken aloud. They settled anyway. I stepped closer to the council line. You knew exactly what I am, I said, voice quiet now. Not myth, not rumor, truth. One elder's composure fractured first. Sweat gathered at his temple. He avoided my eyes. Centuries ago, the council voted to suppress the sovereign line, to ensure the alpha bloodline remained unchallenged. Murmurs turned sharp. That decree required more than politics. It required betrayal. The beta's scent shifted. Not fear now, but calculation, contingency. He hadn't acted alone. That was the final piece. The alpha had not merely been protecting me from external rivals. He had been protecting me from his own council. You moved too soon, I said softly. If you had waited longer, perhaps my power would not have awakened so completely. A flicker of unease passed through the courtyard as the sigil warmed beneath my skin. Whoever engineered his death had expected a grieving widow, a displaced mate, not a sovereign fully realized. You miscalculated, I finished. The elder who had been sweating took half a step back. The beta did not, and that told me everything. The traitor was not the one trembling. It was the one still standing steady. The beta held my gaze as if sheer refusal could bend reality back into place. Steady, defiant, calculating. He still believed this could be contained. "You're destabilizing the pack," he said, voice sharp enough to cut through the courtyard. "Grief has distorted your judgment." A few council members clung to that explanation like driftwood. Grief, hysteria, myth. The ground beneath us trembled, not violently, deliberately. The pack bond pulsed again, harder this time. Wolves staggered slightly, as if adjusting to a new gravity. The pull toward me intensified, no longer subtle, no longer deniable. This was not dominance. It was alignment. My power surged beyond expectation, not a flare, a flood. Heat coursed through my veins, no longer coiled, but expansive. The sigil along my spine blazed fully, light spilling beneath fabric, outlining ancient geometry in stark clarity. The beta stepped back. Just one step. The crack in the courtyard stone split wider, racing outward in branching lines from where I stood. Gasps erupted. Several wolves dropped to their knees again, not by choice. Instinct overrode pride. The air thickened until breathing felt like defiance. "You see," I said, quietly, though my voice carried effortlessly, "hierarchy is not chaos." The bond shifted. I felt it snap into a new configuration, clean, unquestionable. Threads that had once tethered loosely to the beta unraveled and re-wove toward me, not severed in violence, reclaimed. The elder who had trembled earlier collapsed fully to his knees, forehead touching stone. "She's not just bloodline," he whispered hoarsely. The words trembled through the courtyard like prophecy remembered too late. "She's the original." Silence followed, heavy, reverent, terrified. The beta's composure fractured at last. His scent spiked, not only fear, but realization. He had planned for a political struggle, for divided loyalty, for a widow he could isolate. He had not planned for the land itself to answer me. "You killed him," I said. Not shouted, not accused, stated. A flicker in his eyes confirmed more than denial ever could. "And you believed his death would prevent this." The ground cracked again, louder. Stones splintered beneath the dais, forcing the council to scatter. The sky darkened, though no clouds gathered, the wind rising in spirals that circled inward. The power did not feel foreign. It felt remembered. For 30 years it had waited beneath restraint. Now, restraint was gone. Wolves across the courtyard howled, not in mourning, not in confusion, in recognition. The beta reached for dominance, attempting to push his will outward through the bond. It shattered against mine, like glass. He staggered, knees striking stone, and the moment his balance broke, so did the illusion that this was merely succession. This was restoration. The pack knelt again, fully this time, not to a widow, not to an alpha's mate, to the throne that predated them all. The earth pulsed once more beneath my feet, stronger than before. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Don't forget to leave a comment and tell us what you think about the story. We love hearing from you. Your support helps keep this channel alive and bringing you amazing, interesting, and powerful alpha stories. Thank you for being here.